Look now at the pictures that are on page 58 and 59 in your textbook in chapter 6 on occlusion. And this, to me, almost looks like an engineering book because it's showing you the tremendous engineering that has happened for teeth to come in alignment. And some of your orthodontists are probably having computerized programs that are showing from the radiographs that they've taken how things have to happen. Orthodontists and oral maxillofacial surgeons are using tomography and radiographs now to figure out how they're going to move bone around and finally get not only the alignment of teeth, but also the alignment of the maxilla and the mandible. So in these pictures in the book, we're not just talking about the need for these to be right, but also the bones. Now, back on page 57, there is a presentation that begins about the various curves that exist in the dentition. And you want to be aware of these because it is something, you know, we've been talking about how cusps need to fit in certain fossa and how certain teeth need to be next to other teeth. And part of that is not just so you get tooth-to-tooth alignment, but so you get arch alignment, and so you get bone-to-bone alignment up in the TMJ so the patient doesn't have difficulties there. And so in the top diagram on this page 57, they're showing you the curve of Wilson, which is a left-to-right curve. And you would only see that curve if you're looking from the tongue side of the dentiform, and you're seeing that the curve is dropping as you go from buccal to lingual in alignment. So that's a left to right curve. Now on page 51 in your textbook is the curve of Spee, and this is an anterior-posterior curve. So this is the curve of Spee. And it reminds us that our teeth aren't in there straight, that there is a rise as we go from the midsection here in the premolars. We go distally and we go mesially, or we go posteriorly and we go anteriorly. So the curve of Spee is an anterior-posterior curve. The other reference to some type of geometric curving is back on page 57, and there's a term called the sphere of Monson, and they show you a couple of arcs in this mandible, picture of the mandible, and what they're saying is that the curve of Wilson that we're seeing here, this left to right curve, and the curve of Spee that we're seeing anterior-posterior, is really just a portion of a sphere that would exist as you would set the maxilla and the mandible together. And so I'm going to move this book just a minute and show you my rendition of the sphere of Monson. So you have the dentiform, you have the mandibular teeth, and if you take an 8-inch sphere, and I think some of the air has now gone out of my ball here, but you see how this sphere, this ball, sits on the dentiform, and you got to imagine that your skull is really what they're talking about. I'm going to set this down, see if I can get a better picture. So I'm going to turn it now so you can see lingually. You can see as you're sitting on the back looking in, and really when they're talking about the curve of Wilson going left to right, you see indeed that curve is part of a big sphere. So the line that they're showing as a curve could in fact be the pressure that the skull is putting on is in better stressful relationship with the patient if we have that right relationship of the teeth. So this is the sphere of Monson, and then this is the curve of Wilson, left to right. We're just tracing a line on the ball. Now if I turn this around so that you see an anterior-posterior relationship, I haven't moved the sphere, but I have now a curve that exists on this now going from posterior to anterior, and that was the curve of Spee, anterior to posterior. So, you know, I'm sure that those three doctors, Wilson and Spee and Monson, all got their doctorate based on something they had figured out about when they were calculating things and looking at teeth. And Dr. Spee was showing how you had to have that curve anterior-posterior, and Dr. Wilson said, well, you got to have the right curve left to right. And Dr. Monson may not have even been a dentist. Dr. Monson may have been a mathematician specializing in geometry, to say to Dr. Wilson and Dr. Spee, well, you guys, don't you realize you're just talking about parts and arcs off of a whole sphere? And so he named that the sphere of Monson. And then some of the mathematical formulas that computers are using to predict the best relationship of jaws as orthodontists and as maxillofacial surgeons are moving things around have been based on somebody's realization that this is indeed a mathematical model, and some engineering has been significant to be able to establish the skull such that you have the best relationship for all the bones, and then the teeth in the best relationship. So this is a great example of how somebody studying will come together, and now we have all these great computerized programs in orthodontics and oral maxillofacial surgery to move the head around in great alignment.